Everybody. Just hang on just a second. I'm trying to get Instagram on here. All right. Welcome, Instagram. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram. Um, okay. Looks like we're doing all right here. I'm trying to get this fixed to where you guys can see okay. All right. So welcome everyone. Yeah, we're just back on another edition of Book Chat. I just got done speaking with our library board, and I will be moving to a new location next door, but it's still a nice place to move to, so I'm excited. Um, so the next time, not the next time, but probably in the next couple of weeks, I will be in a new office in my own building, uh, in my own room. So, with another room of my stuff. So, I think it'll be really fun, and I'm hoping that it will look more attractive than my messy, super messy office behind me, and that it'll be a place where it won't be loud and have dogs barking in the background and things like that. So anyway, I mean, not that I might still come live here once in a while just for fun, but I will have my own office, so that will be nice. Um, so anyway, we have in the bookstore, we have on eBay, which is our main bookstore, we have a 25% sale going on. It should be on there. If it's not, let me know. But it is, there's still a lot of very nice things going on in there. 25% off. And then also in the estate find store, there's a 25% off sale. I just kind of held that over for a while with the sales, just so people could get a chance to have something to read when it's icky outside and things. So we're going to go with that for a while. Also, Whatnot is exploding. I don't know what's going on over there, but it is nuts over there. I'll say that. So on Whatnot, I am selling library discarded books and donations. So it is not antiquarian, although I do have a future antiquarian book sale coming up, not this Thursday, but the following Thursday. And it's the name of it is Antiquarian Books, but it's going to have everything. Like we'll have graphic novels and everything there, sci-fi and everything, all the things that people like to read. So that is not this Thursday, but the following one. Now, this Thursday is named graphic novels, which is, we do still have quite of those. And then at some point, I'm going to do a pop up comic book sale because we are collecting a lot of those or getting donations of comic books and as well as graphic novels. But so we want to get those going as well. So I'll probably do a separate one for the comics. I may do it here. I'm not sure. I'm just trying to figure out. Depends on where I moved at by then. But um, so anyway, that's coming up as well. Um, so I don't know. This thing called Whatnot is crazy, but it's super fun, and I love to meet people on there, and you get to see your all the books, real time because it's live, and you can see all the flaws and all the stuff, you know. So which I love, because that way I don't have to worry about people, you know, disliking it when they get it as much. I mean, they can still return stuff, but as much, it cuts down on that quite a bit. So anyway, um, so that's the big news today. I'm totally thrilled that I'm going to be in a new space and a new office, and I'll be able to have more space to lay things out and not be so cramped and just, you know, having things stacked everywhere and all that. So so that'll be coming up in the next few weeks, and I'll maybe even give a tour of it one night on here, just so you guys can see what it looks like. Um, so I guess that's about all the updates I have. So tonight, as usual, we're going to have our Agatha Christie chapter reading. You guys on Instagram, this is our Agatha Christie book that we've been reading. It's a really good book. It's a little creepy, but it's okay. It's not terribly creepy. It's just a little on the creep side. Um, so we'll just jump right into that. Exercise in detection. Where do you think the body was about here? Asked Giles. He and Gwenda were standing in the front hall of Hillside. Now, just a little bit, just so I can explain what's happened in this book. It's about a couple that rents. Well, it doesn't. They don't rent it. They buy a house on the coast of England, and the wife has a very intense deja vu type thing where she sees like this body on the floor, um, and can't think if she doesn't think she's ever been in the house, but it's looking very likely that she was. And now she's finding out all about this stuff. Like, actually, when she was real little, she used to live in the house, and she didn't know that before. And they freakishly bought this house. You know, like, what a freakish coincidence. And so um, that's what we're doing here. So anyway, it says he and Gwenda were standing in the front hall of Hillside. They had arrived back the night before, and Giles was now in full cry. Get this down just a little. He was as pleased as a small boy with his new toy. Just about, said Gwenda. She retreated up the stairs and peered down critically. Yes, I think that's about it. Crouch down, said Giles. You're only 3 years old, you know. Gwenda crouched obligingly. She couldn't actually see the man who said the words. I can't remember seeing him. He must have been just a bit farther back. Yes, there. I could only see his paws. Paws? Giles frowned. They were paws, gray paws, not human. But look here, Gwenda, this isn't a kind of murder in the Rue morgue. A man doesn't have paws. Well, he had paws. Giles looked doubtfully at her. You must have imagined that bit afterwards. Gwenda said slowly, Don't you think I may have imagined the whole thing? You know, Giles, I've been thinking. It seems to me far more probable that the whole thing was a dream. It might have been. It was the sort of dream a child might have and be terribly frightened and go on remembering about. Don't you think really that's the proper explanation? Because nobody in Dilmouth seems to have the faintest idea that there was ever a murder, or a sudden death, or a disappearance, or anything odd about this house. Giles looked like a different kind of little boy, a little boy who has had his nice new toy taken away from him. I suppose it might have been a nightmare, he admitted grudgingly. Then his face cleared suddenly. No, he said, I don't believe it. You could have dreamt about monkeys' paws and someone dead, but I'm damned if you could have dreamt that quotation from the Duchess of Malfi. I could have heard someone say it and then dreamt about it afterwards. I don't think any child could do that, not unless you heard it in conditions of great stress, and if that was the case, we are back again where we were. Hold on, I've got it. It was the pause you dreamt. You saw the body and heard the words, and you were scared stiff, and then you had a nightmare about it. And there were waving monkeys' paws, too. Probably you were frightened of monkeys. Gwenda looked slightly dubious. She said slowly, I suppose that might be it. I wish you could remember a bit more. Come on here in the hall. Shut your eyes. Think. Doesn't anything more come back to you? No, it doesn't, Giles. The more I think, the further it goes all the way. I mean, I'm beginning to doubt now if I ever really saw anything at all. Perhaps the other night I just had a brainstorm in the theater. No, there was something. Miss Marple thinks so too. What about Helen? Surely you must remember something about Helen. I don't remember anything at all. It's just a name. It might have even been the right name. Yes, it was. It was Helen. Glenda looked obstinate and convinced. Then, if you're so sure it was Helen, you must know something about her, said Giles, reasonably. Do you know her well? Was she living here, or just staying here? I tell you, I don't know. Gwenda was beginning to look strained and nervy. Giles tried another tack. Who else can you remember? Your father? No, I mean, I can't tell. There was always his photograph, you see. Aunt Allison used to say, that's your daddy. I don't remember him here in this house, and no servants, nurses, anything like that. No, no, the more I try and remember, the more it's all a blank. The things I know are all underneath, like walking to that door automatically. I didn't remember a door there. Perhaps if you wouldn't worry me so much, Giles, things would come back more. Anyway, trying to find out about it all is hopeless. It's so long ago. Of course, it's not hopeless. Even old Mrs. Marple will admit that. She didn't help us with any ideas of how to set it about, said Gwenda, and yet I feel from the glint in her eyes that she had a few. I wonder how she would have gone about it. I don't suppose she would be likely to think of ways that we wouldn't, said Giles positively. We must stop speculating, Gwenda, and set about things in a systematic way. We've made a beginning. I've looked through the parish registers of deaths. There's no Helen of the right age among them. In fact, there doesn't seem to be a Helen at all in the period I covered. Ellen Pugg, 94, was the nearest. Now we must think of the next profitable approach. If your father and presumably your stepmother lived in this house, they must either have bought it or rented it. According to Foster, the gardener, some people called Elworthy and had it before the Hengraves, and therefore them Mrs. Findison, nobody else. Your father might have bought it and lived in it for a very short time and then sold it again. But I think that it's much more likely that he rented it, probably rented it furnished. So, if so, our best bet is to go round the house agents. Going round the house agents was not a prolonged labor, There were only two house agents in Dilmouth. Messrs. Wilkinson were a comparatively new arrival. They had only opened their premises 11 years ago. They dealt mostly with the small bungalows and new houses at the far end of the town. Other agents, Messrs. Galbraith and Penderley, were the ones from whom Gwenda had bought the house. Calling upon them, Giles plunged into his story. He and his wife were delighted with Hillside and with Dilmouth generally. Mrs. Reed had only just discovered that she had actually lived in Dilmouth as a small child. She had some very faint memories of the place, and had an idea that Hillside was actually the house in which she had lived, but could not be quite certain about it. Had they any record of the house being let to a major holiday, it would be about 18 or 19 years ago. Mr. Penderley stretched out apologetic hands. I'm afraid it's not possible to tell you, Mr. Reed. Our records do not go back that far, not, that is, of furnished or short period lets. Very sorry I can't help you, Mr. Reed. As a matter of fact, if our old head clerk, Mr. Narcott, had still been alive, he died last winter, he might have been able to assist you. A most remarkable memory, really quite remarkable. He had been with the firm for nearly 30 years. There's no one else who could possibly remember? Our staff is all on the comparatively young side. Of course there is old Mr. Galbraith himself. He retired some years ago. Could I ask him? said Gwenda. Asked Gwenda. Well, I hardly know about that. Mr. Penderley was dubious. He had a stroke last year. His faculties are sadly impaired. He's over 80, you know. Does he live in Dulmouth? Oh, yes, at Calcutta Lodge, a very nice little property on the Seaton Road. But I really don't think. It's rather a forlorn hope, said Giles to Gwenda. But you never know. I don't think he will write. We'll go there together and exert our personality. Calcutta Lodge was surrounded by a neat, trim garden, and the sitting room into which they were shown was also neat, if slightly overcrowded. It smelt of beeswax and ronic. Ronic? Its brasses shone, its windows were heavily festooned. A thin, middle-aged woman with suspicious eyes came into the room. Giles explained himself quickly, and the expression of one who expects to have a vacuum cleaner pushed at her left Miss Galbraith's face. I'm sorry, but I really don't think I can help you, she said. It's so long ago, isn't it? One does sometimes remember things, said Gwenda. Of course, I shouldn't know anything myself. I never had any connection with the business. A major holiday, you said. No, I never remember coming across anyone in Dilmouth of that name. Your father might remember, perhaps, said Gwenda. Father? Miss Galbraith shook her head. He doesn't take much notice nowadays, and his memory's very shaky. Gwenda's eyes were resting thoughtfully on a Benares brass table, and they shifted a procession of ebony elephants marching along the mantelpiece. I thought he might remember, perhaps, she said, because my father had just come from India. Your house is called Calcutta Lodge? He paused. She paused interrogatively. Yes, said Miss Galbraith. Father was out in Calcutta for a time. A business in business there when the war came, and in 1920 he came into the firm here, but would have liked to go back, he always said. But my mother didn't fancy foreign parts, and of course you can't say the climate's really healthy. Well, I don't know. Perhaps you'd like to see my father. I don't know that it's one of his good days. She led them into a small black study. Here, propped up in a big shabby leather chair, sat an old gentleman with a white walrus mustache. His face was pulled slightly sideways. He eyed Gwenda with distinct approval as his daughter made the introductions. Memory's not what it used to be, he said in a rather indistinct voice. Halliday, you say? No, I don't remember that name. I knew a boy at school in Yorkshire, but that's 70 odd years ago. He rented Hillside, we think, said Giles. Hillside? Was it called Hillside then? Mr. Galbraith's one movable eyelid snapped shut and open. Findeson lived there. Fine woman. My father might have rented it furnished. He'd just come from India. India, did you say? Remember a fellow army man knew that old rascal Mohammed Hassan who cheated me over some carpets. Had a young wife and a baby. Had a young wife and a baby, a little girl. That was me, said Gwenda firmly. Indeed, you don't say so. Well, time flies. Now, what was his name? Wanted a place furnished. Yes, Mrs. Findeson had been ordered to Egypt or some such place for the winter. All tomfoolery. Now, what was his name? Halliday, said Gwenda. That's right, my dear, Halliday. Major Halliday. Nice fellow. Very pretty wife. Quite young, fair-haired. Wanted to be near her people, or something like that. Yes, very pretty. Who were her people? No idea at all. No idea. You don't look like her. Gwenda nearly said she was only my stepmother, but refrained from complicating the issue. She said, what did she look like? Unexpectedly, Mr. Galbraith replied, looked worried. That's what she looked, worried. Yes, very nice fellow, that major chap. Interested to hear I'd been out in Calcutta. Not like these chaps that have never been out of England. Narrow, that's what they are. Now I've seen the world. What was his name? That army chap wanted a furnished house. He was like a very old gramophone repeating a worn record. St. Catherine's, that's it. Took St. Catherine's 6 guineas a week while Mrs. Findeson was in Egypt. Died there, poor soul. House was put up for auction. Why, who bought it now? Ellsworthy, that's it. Pack of women. Sisters. Changed the name, said St. Catherine's was popish. Very down on anything popish. Used to send out tracts. Plain women, all of them. Took an interest in the natives. Sent 'em out trousers and Bibles. Very strong on converting the heathen. He sighed suddenly and leaned back. Long time ago, he said fretfully. Can't remember names. Chap from India, nice chap. I'm tired, Gladys. I like my tea. Giles and Gwenda thanked him and thanked his daughter and came away. So that's proved, said Gwenda. My father and I were at Hillside. What do we do next? I've been an idiot, said Giles. Somerset House. What's Somerset? Asked Gwenda. It's a record office where you can look up marriages. I'm going there to look up your father's marriage. According to your aunt, your father was married to a second wife immediately on arriving in England. Don't you see, Gwenda? It ought to have occurred to us before. It's perfectly possible. that Helen may have been a relation to your stepmother's, a young sister perhaps. Anyway, once we know what her surname was, we may be able to get on to someone who knows about the general setup at Hillside. Remember the old boy said they wanted a house in Dilmouth to be near Mrs. Halliday's people. If her people live here, near here, we may get something. Giles, said Gwenda, I think you're wonderful. Part 3. Giles did not, after all, find it necessary to go to London, though his energetic nature always made him prone to rush hither and thither and try to do everything himself. He admitted that a purely routine inquiry could be delegated. He put through a trunk call to his office. Got it, he exclaimed enthusiastically when the expected reply arrived. From the covering letter he extracted a certified copy of a marriage certificate. Here we are, Gwenda, Friday, August 7th. Kensington Registry Office, Kelvin James Halliday, to Helen Spenlove Kennedy. Gwenda cried out sharply, Helen! They looked at each other. Giles said slowly, But it can't be her. I mean, they separated and she married again and went away. We don't know, said Gwenda, that she went away. She looked again at the plainly written name, Helen Spenlove Kennedy. Helen. And that's it for tonight, guys. So we will start on chapter 7 next Monday. And we will follow up with this next Monday. And let's see. What are you guys? Okay. All right. Sorry for the jiggling, guys. And we will start again with chapter, I guess that's 7 that we're on. And looks like someone left a message. Well, I don't know who that is for sure, but IMED, if you, or IDE M7, if you have a certain question or something, that's fine. Not sure what you're asking. Okay, so I will see you next week, 7:30 Central Standard Time, and we will continue on this, and I'll give you some more updates. Okay, thanks so much, and we will see you then. Bye.